Oh my goodness, I am beyond excited for this podcast today. We have a super special guest, Lisa Wimberger of the Neuro-Sculpting Institute. Lisa, I heard about you years ago. We've only had relations really through Zoom and texting.
I had the privilege of doing a little bit of work with you.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to make some recordings for men.
Your books were instrumental in my healing. Your meditations were really extraordinary during a period where I was going through divorce and having to face a lot of stories and patterns that came up, and they prepared me, your work, in a way, for this one. So,
whoa, I just got chills.
Super grateful to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how all this happened. What is neurosculpting, and who are you?
Well, first though, how amazing to have built relationships with both of you virtually and then eventually get to be in person. It's such a weird world we live in. But I'm so grateful for it. So neurosculpting, my life. So it was born out of my own trauma as you have a choice, right? You can be traumatized and then not do anything with it and be shut down by it, or you can learn from it and then take that learning and synthesize it out to the world to maybe help people, and that's what I chose to do. So being hit by lightning at 15 on my birthday in the base of the spine triggered an entire few decades of seizure disorder that went undiagnosed forever.
I have to ask, where were you when that happened?
Were you flirting with
I was standing on a mountain with an umbrella. I don't know why I got it. No, a bunch of our friends we were riding trikes. We were in Pennsylvania at my friend's house. It was my 15th birthday. We were all out on trikes and little motorcycles, and a hailstorm came in.
Oof.
And we took shelter under an awning, and I and the boy I had a crush on.
Ooh, lightning struck.
Yes. We were standing against the garage, which had that long metal handle that I was leaning against the metal handle. The side of the garage got hit, and it came out through the handle, and he and I flew. Just probably 4 or 5 feet. I landed face first in the dirt, had no idea what happened, thought he hit me, and was very surprised. And then a bunch of the friends, they were staring at us with mouths open, saying, "You got hit by lightning, you flew through the air." Whoa. I did not lose consciousness.
Oh my gosh.
Were clothes burned or anything?
Clothes were not burned, but my back was extremely sore.
Did you get wet?
I was wet from the rain, which, note to self, wet socks, lightning, metal,
not a good
bad combo. But by the time we got back to the house, I already started thinking it didn't really happen. I was conscious, he was conscious, and no one believed us. And a couple days later, I started having seizures.
Wow.
They were fairly mild in the first year. They were blackouts, but I could recuperate pretty quickly. But later I found out lots of concussive brain signature in my cortex that I never knew I had until about a month ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're still discovering.
Still discovering things. So, but I would knock down the bathroom door with my head because I would go out like a ton of bricks, or I would end up with black eyes. I'd wake up and I'd be on the floor with black eyes from hitting things on the way down. They got really bad. They were vasovagal seizures, meaning non-epileptic. So my vagus nerve was not conditioned. So when the world was stressful or I was about to menstruate, my nervous system, my vagus nerve was like, nope, can't do this. Shutting down.
Was it hard for doctors to understand?
They had no idea.
Okay.
So how did you figure it out?
Yeah, this is a great story. You're gonna love this. I was in a gyno exam.
Oh gosh.
This is perfect for everything you both do.
Welcome to the
I swear
Body Lounge.
I wasn't paid to tell you this story. So I was in a gyno exam. I was probably 31.
Okay.
So now I've been having seizures since I was 15.
Okay.
So 16 years.
Yes.
Wow.
And they were I couldn't understand why I couldn't recalibrate from them as I was in my late 20s to early 30s. And I was in the gyno exam, and all I remember was my knees, which interestingly, I have my knees showing today.
Hey.
My knees and the little robe and the doctor, his little white hair, and I said, I think I'm gonna pass out.
Oh.
I was getting a cervical pap smear.
Okay.
So didn't know he triggered my vagus nerve, but I said, I think I'm gonna pass out. And all I remember is his little face going, okay, lay back. That's it, that was my memory. Then I went out. What I opened my eyes to was what I knew as opening my eyes after an episode. I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, I couldn't really form thoughts. I had urinated myself, I was about to defecate myself. And I was pins and needles from head to toe. And for me, this was normal.
Okay.
And I looked at him and he was shaking and he had a needle of atropine right at my heart to try to resuscitate me. That Pulp Fiction scene.
Yes.
He was right there and I opened my eyes and I scared him and he was shaking and he said, "You flatlined. Has this ever happened before?" And I couldn't even speak. So I'm thinking, yes, this has been happening since I was 15. And he was the one who after all the brain scans, he said, "You're not epileptic. I think you had a vasovagal seizure."
Wow.
Where you flatlined because it first plummets your heart rate and then it shuts off your brain versus epilepsy, which is cortical and in the brain first.
Okay.
I had never heard any of these terms, and that was the start of let me study neuroscience so I could fix this because they were getting really bad. And in the beauty of the way the nervous system learns and adapts, it will get better and more efficient at what you keep asking it to do. So my seizures were increasing in severity. My heart was staying stopped for longer and longer. And then the last 2 seizures I had was the longest that I was ever out. But the very last one I had, I was done breathing on my own. It was just my husband had to just keep pushing on my chest and shaking me, but I was out and done and saying, I'm not going back there.
Wow.
But then I remembered I had a daughter and she was in a crib. Crap, I gotta go back there. Okay. So if I go back there, I cannot have this happen again.
Yes.
Hence the neurosculpting protocol.
Amazing.
I knew there was no medicine, so I was going to figure it out through neuroplasticity. I was going to create this process. It was a Hail Mary, and it worked. And it worked.
Amazing. And are there a lot of people that do have these type of seizures? Like,
Yes, actually, I've worked with like at least 8 young women with seizures who have either stopped their seizures or gotten off seizure meds or
Wow.
drastically minimized them with the very same process.
Amazing.
Did the other gentleman that was hit by lightning have similar?
No, I reached out to him when I was writing my first book. I know about the fallacy of memory, and I thought maybe I'm delusional. Maybe it really didn't happen. And I reached out to him and some other friends who were there just before I published the book to just make sure. And they're like, "No, it happened," and he didn't have.
The same place?
No, he didn't. But I was touching the metal handle. He was shoulder to shoulder with me.
So it went via you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, how did you start to kind of piece together a little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Well, I knew from what they told me that this was a deconditioned nervous system vagal nerve. So first I studied what conditions the vagus nerve, what deconditions it. Then I had to wrap my mind around, if this is not a short circuit in my brain, but this is a stress management issue, then maybe there's a little room to condition myself enough where I could create a little virtual rehearsal container inside of meditation and rehearse a new response upon feeling the first sign of a seizure aura.
I really love that, and I love it because it's inspiring how I've used your work, but it also ties into what I want to talk about today, which is how so many of us in intimate settings or relational settings or even self-pleasuring settings, we have a lot of reactions and patterns and things that really inhibit pleasure, inhibit the body. And the fact that you could possibly retrain and practice a different scenario so that you actually could learn to move toward a kind of intimacy that you crave but can't yet experience, is why I really want to have this conversation today.
I mean, you absolutely can retrain almost anything to some degree. And we never know to what degree until we try to retrain it. But so there's two things that you just made me think of. One is, yes, you can retrain your habituated associations and stories and belief systems around intimacy. And in neurosculpting, if you can talk to your nervous system in a way that it listens, then you can dilate time. So think of flow state, right? Flow state is a different perception of time. That is this beautiful harmony of being present but yet relaxed. And in neurosculpting, the first two steps, we do that. We get relaxed but very recruited presence. And in that space, you can take a rehearsal moment and dilate the time of the parts that typically would be unconscious in the waking state. So people say to me, I can't retrain my seizure patterns because my auras are so fast. And I said, you can. In a meditation, you can dilate the time in practice that aura lasts. And you can choose different options and then compress that, embed it, so that in real time it is a subconscious recall and you don't need all of this pre-awareness. And this is what I get from a lot of people is, but this is a reaction, it just happens. Yes, and it didn't just happen always, it happened once and you formulated your story around it and then you habituated to that. And that is why you think you're reacting, when in fact you've just compressed the time in which you've made a decision and now it's become a subconscious decision. So if we re-expand that time signature, it becomes a conscious decision, at least in the rehearsal space. And you do that enough and then it becomes automated. So it's a very interesting play with time.
What's an aura?
An aura is generally what people with seizures feel fractions of a second before they go out. For everyone, it's different. Some with epilepsy will see like stars, or they'll get like light auras or sound auras. And for me, I always called it a halo because I didn't see anything. It was more like my stomach would just drop out. And it would be about a fraction of a second and then out.
Interesting. And that would be different than, say, when I have sometimes some blood cleaning procedures or whatever, and my, what do they call it? The parasympathetic goes into an overreaction, and then everything starts to go black. Is it the same?
It's the same thing. It's just what degree and gradation of that response do you get. So the normal dorsal freeze spectrum is first, shame or blushing or in the normal day-to-day life. But then if you're doing something like, let's say you see blood, or you are squatting in the garden and then you stand up quickly, you can get a little bit deeper of that dorsal response because it's still doing the same thing. Your parasympathetic is saying this is too much. And you'll get woozy or lightheaded. Sometimes you might pass out, but the dorsal seizures are when you've exceeded the thresholds of those things. And there's just no way the nervous system feels it can cope at all. So it just says, we're done. But it's the exact same stepping.
Could you explain a little bit, just because this is new to the podcast, you're our first brain neuropathway person. We mention it here or there because we're both nerds and we love this stuff. But could you talk a little bit about neuroplasticity, what that is, why it's important, and maybe what helps us become more plastic?
Yes. Interestingly, sexual intimacy. How perfectly positioned. Okay, so neuroplasticity is the nervous system's ability to adapt and change in any moment. And it's happening all the time. It's not like it only happens sometimes. Our nervous system is learning and adapting in all moments. Unfortunately, it's learning and adapting to repeated, habituated stories, so it doesn't feel like we're learning and adapting. We're actually learning and adapting and getting better at all of the ways that we've always done X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
Which can be good if you're wanting to just go through everyday life.
Yes.
But if you've done it in some way
Yes.
that doesn't help, then it's not so good.
It can be great if you're an athlete and
Exactly.
you want to get better at running.
Yeah.
You layer that on to all the things you know about running. It can be really bad if what you're relearning in each moment is your stress response, your trauma response. So what we get to do with this state of learning is we get to first identify it, make it conscious, and then decide what we want to point this energy towards. It's a set of conditions in the nervous system. It's a set of brain conditions, it's a set of body conditions, and there are very clean, clear, simple triggers that you can use to make it explicit and conscious so that you can point it at anything you want to learn. So it's just how we learn to do everything in life. And neurosculpting just really articulates the natural process of learning, making it really user-friendly.
So would you say, like say with someone who's had some sexual abuse or trauma, and then the story gets set in, and then they can only kind of recognize that which is a match to that story, so then they re-imprint or re-trigger over and over again, that actually can also be rewritten if a person so chooses to have a reclamation of that?
Yes, over the last 20 years, I've seen that happen countless times. Countless times. So no, I don't want to minimize anyone's sexual trauma. I too have a whole survival story around that, so I'm not minimizing it. But what I will say is it is doing a disservice to yourself and your healing to believe you can't rewrite it.
Yeah.
You can keep the importance of the event. You can choose to forgive or not forgive whoever, whatever. But this is your body, your life, and your governance. And if you don't want to believe that can change, then you're likely going to habituate more and more. And it doesn't mean you're wrong or broken. It just means you haven't really been taught the specific protocols, but you absolutely can.
Yeah, that's what I have noticed with my work as well. And what excited me about your work is some of the old, more Taoist meditations are very neurosculpting-like. You go in and you look at an organ and you have an adventure within, and you're using kind of new ideas here and there, or sounds or light or textures. And then actually once you make contact with the area that's painful or not so nice, then eventually you use a smiling kind of presence and you transform that space. So I thought that it was really interesting that people thousands of years ago were meditating like this, and then here we are with the ability to measure things and look at things.
Yeah, that is exactly what we do in neurosculpting versus the TM kind of experience, not to just point out TM meditation, but transcendental meditation. But the what a lot of people consider meditation is like that no thought relaxation space, and that is not necessarily a neuroplasticity space. That's a relaxation space. Different tools, different animals, different outcomes.
So that's kind of the first step of your neuroplasticity,
Yes.
getting into the relaxation.
Yes.
We're about to switch into the explicit part of the podcast, but before we do that, I just wanted to kind of name, I don't know, just the hope that we can have for all of us listening, that the way that you relate, the way you experience pleasure, the way that you may not experience pleasure, pain in the body, discomfort in the body.
Waking up numbness.
Part of that is, I think, the body inviting us into a deeper intimacy, and I find that your tools, sculpting tools, are like a really great, easy way to become intimate without making it woo-woo and weird
or scary because you go at your own pace.
Correct.
Yeah, I would say so.